Hello and welcome to another episode of me reacting to fan-made cards I found online. In this case, I didn't actually find these cards online, they were sent to me. And they were sent to me because the Dutch Open Terraforming Mars tournament and event is happening again this year in September, exactly 3 months from now. And as last year, when I also covered some fan-made cards that were made in relation to that event, there will be another contest for the best fan-made card, in addition to the Terraforming Mars championship that is held there. And these cards that we are talking about today, they have entered into this contest. So sadly, there are no more tickets available for the Dutch Open. But if you want to join it next year, because it's sold out really quickly this year apparently, if you want to join it next year, I will link to it in the comments and you can check it out. Or I will link to it in the description of the video as well. So yeah, let's hop straight into the cards. First one here is Power Bank Facility. And this is an interesting one. I think there are two cards with a somewhat similar concept this episode of being able to use energy for something else other than just turning it into heat and using it more directly as a source of TR. And in the case of Power Bank Facility, this card costs 7 MC, has a building and a power tech, so this is a trusted combination. But it's a power tech card that doesn't increase your power prod, and this is something I always complain about. So it's actually nice to see a card that does something else with this tech. Power Bank Facility has these battery tokens, so a new special resource. And you can, as an action, remove 5 of these battery tokens from this card to raise your TR one step. So how do you get these battery tokens? Well, first of all, 2 of them immediately get added to the card. And then the effect on the card says you may use battery tokens as energy. During production, you may convert energy into battery tokens instead of heat. So, in your production turn, basically, during the step where you convert power to heat, you can instead convert your power as much as you want or as little as you want of it to battery tokens. You can still then use it as energy, and this is actually quite cool because let's say you're playing with colonies but you don't have 3 power prod. Let's say you only have 2, for example. Then you can convert the energy tokens to, or the energy resources to battery tokens. And then after 2 gens, you will have 4 battery tokens on Power Bank Facility, or even after 1 gen because you start off with 2. And then you can use these battery tokens as energy because it says that on the effect. But you can also do something which is quite cool. You can turn these battery tokens into TR. So let's say the heat rushes up really fast and is basically maxed out, but you maybe played mass converter and quantum extractor because you were going for science. So what do you do with all of this power if there's no thermalist to fund? Well, you could just turn it all into battery tokens and then get TR out of that. Just 1 per gen, but it's also quite difficult to, or not that difficult because I only need 5, so not 8. Like with, for example, the one card that lets you convert heat into TR. I'll put it on screen. I've forgotten the name. Something with contract. Caretaker contract. That is the card. So you only need 5 instead of 8, but it needs to be energy, and energy is generally a bit more expensive than heat. On the face of it, I think this has a similar problem as the card that lets you convert energy into MC and also power caretaker contract, because both of these cards and Power Bank Facility generally don't give you a net benefit. They don't really give you like production card draw points or whatever. They are a combo piece that allows you to turn something into something else. The good thing with Power Bank Facility is that the thing that you're using to and turning it into TR is generally less valuable than the TR. For example, with Caretaker contract, turning 8 heat into a TR, that's worse than turning 8 heat into a temperature bump. Just slightly worse. And sometimes it can be better because you don't want to increase the heat, for example, or the temperature, for example. But generally, you don't get a discount or anything. With power bank facility, you get a bit of a discount because 5 energy usually don't grant you a TR. You would need 8 of that and then turn that into heat. But I hope you get what I'm saying. It doesn't really enhance your play. It just gives you more options and a slight discount and a bit of flexibility. I still think this card can be quite nice, especially when playing with colonies and gaining that flexibility to maybe use less energy to trade every second gen, for example. Or, as I said, if you don't want to increase the temperature because you're playing a really strong engine setup, but you played Mass Converter and Quantum for the space discounts, you might want to just use the energy to increase your TR with Power Bank facility. That's possible. So I think it's a good card in certain circumstances, but it's not overpowered in any way. Next up, we have Flower Shop. 15 MC cost, minimum of 20 degrees, so similar to Noctis farming, and has the same tax as Noctis farming, but it grants a plant prod, which is also always quite nice, and you can pay for it with steel. And it says, when you increase plant production 1 step, increase your MC production 1 step. So this Flower Shop, this card, also grants you an MC production instantly. Probably should say when you increase plant production 1 step, including this, increase your MC production, but whatever. That's nitpicky. I think it's quite expensive for what it does, because on the face of it, it's an engine card, or it's a development card. It grants you MC production, and you play this in the early mid game. At that point, do you want to pay 15 MC for basically MC production? The good thing about it is that it also gives you an instant plant production. And if you're swimming in steel, then this card is definitely nice. There are great mid to late game plant producers like bushes or kelp. And if you play those with Flower Shop down, then they give you quite a bit of MC production on top. Basically, an MC production is worth 4.5 MC if you think about sponsors. The most basic card that grants MC production that costs 9 for 2. So 6 plus 3 for 2. And the plant production costs 12 because of Adapted Lichen. So 12 plus 4.5 is 16.5. And this costs 18. You get 16.5 in immediate value for 18. And with every plant production that you get down afterwards, Flower Shop is already net positive. But at the same time, as I said, you cannot play it immediately, and MC production loses in value quite rapidly. Still, I think I like this card, and it's probably a good one to pick up if you have a lot of seed production. Next up, Genetic Enhancement. Costs 9 MC, has a science tag and a microbe tag, grants an instant point, and it says when you play plant, microbe, or animal tag, your global requirements are plus minus 2, your choice. So basically, this is a slightly more niche but cheaper version of adaptation tag, because it costs 3 MC less, has 1 more tag, but works only when playing one of these 3 tags. In the base game, most of the tags with global requirements have these. Some crucial ones don't. For example, Lake Marineris and Methane from Titan. Both of those you sometimes really want the flexibility, because if you get adaptation tag, or if you're playing Adventrix, for example, then you can play Methane from Titan immediately without the oxygen, and if you play that Gen 1, it can be a really good card. And then Lake Marineris, sometimes the oceans are running out, you really want to play it for as an efficient point card, and then Inventrix or Adaption Tech or Special Design can really help getting it down. Genetic Enhancement doesn't work for those, but most of the other cards in the base game with global requirements have one of these 3 techs. With Venus Next, it's a bit different. There are quite a few Venus Next cards that have a Venus requirement. This would also work for Venus because it's the same iconography as Special Design, Adaption Tech, and Inventrix, and all of those work for Venus as well, even though the parameter doesn't show here. So it doesn't work for most of the Venus, or some of the Venus techs at least. There's stuff like stratospheric birds, Venusian insects, and Venusian animals that it will still work on. I don't think this card is particularly great. Adaption Tech is like a D tier card. It can sometimes be really nice, but it's just really expensive, and the net value is often not that great. Often it's just 1 gen earlier that you can play it, the card in question, and often that's not worth it to pay. In the case of Adaption Tech, 15 MC, in this case 12 MC. You have to subtract out the point, but still. If you combine Genetic Enhancement with, for example, Inventrix, where you get the ability quote-unquote for free, Genetic Enhancement is definitely nice because it's cheaper than Adaption Tech, and then it can get ridiculous, like with Inventrix, play kelp farming at 2 oceans, but still I don't think it's that great. And yeah, I would have liked like a really cheap version of it, like for like 2 MC, but that gives you only the flexibility of 1 step. That would make it a little bit more different from Adaption Tech, still with like only working on these 3 tags. And then like if it's that cheap and with the 2 great tags, probably should cost more than 2 MC, because Search for Life already costs 3 MC, and that is basically just a tag. So maybe it's like 4 MC and flexibility on these 3 tags for 1 step. Then I could see myself playing it a few times. But yeah, I don't think there's that much else to say. Next up, Bees. I really like this card. This costs 10 MC. It requires 6% oxygen and at least 1 greenery down, which most of the time when you reach 6% oxygen happened, but there could be like a bumper game where you're not at 6%, where you're at 6% and there's not a greenery down already, but bees definitely need some plants down to survive. There's a plant and an animal tag. 2 animals on here are 1 point, and the action allows you to add an animal to this card. So it's as like similar to small animals, gets unlocked at the same oxygen percentage and is a half-point animal, but it doesn't remove plant production from your opponent, and it has an extra effect where you gain an animal on this card. Where whenever you gain an animal on this card, you also gain 1 plant. So it isn't just half an animal per gen, it's also a plant, half a point per gen, it's also a plant per gen. And that's quite interesting, because a card that allows you to gain plants outside of the production phase, just at some point during your turn, can be quite nice, because this is basically 1 plant that you have available that can't get destroyed. So you could be sitting at 7 plants, and then someone demoses you. You lose those 7 plants, but you still have that 1 from bees. If it was just plant production, you would have been at 8 plants, and that plant would also have been destroyed. Sometimes it can also be annoying, because you might want to combo 2 actions together, and the second should be a greenery conversion. But with bees, you first need to activate it to get the plant. But yeah, I still like the flexibility. And then there's stuff like flying to Miranda, for example, getting a few animals, putting them on bees, and then getting a few plants out of them as well. But animals are generally quite hard to get. There's that 1 action card that allows you to turn energy into 1 animal. I'll put it on screen because I really don't know the name of that one. There's like imported hydrogen, local heat trapping, and then of course Miranda, a few other things. But generally you cannot really get that many animals, in one go. It's not like microbes where you can fly to Enceladus and get like 5 microbes or something. That's not happening. So the effect is not that strong, but the tags are great. Half point animal that gets unlocked relatively early on, getting some plants. I think this card is okay. I actually like it quite a lot, and I think it's cute. Next up, Laser to Mars, and this one is the one that I was referencing when I was talking about power bank facility. So this one also allows you to turn energy into something else. It's much more closely related to just using the energy as heat, but much more effectively. Because instead of needing 8, you only need 3. And you can get a temperature step each gen out of this. It's quite expensive at 12 MC, and it also requires you to have 3 science tags, but it has a science tag itself that can be really nice. For example, for quantum, you get your 3rd science tag, then you play Laser to Mars, and then you have 4 and can play quantum. And that means that you also immediately get, not immediately, but the gen afterwards, you would be able to use Laser to Mars guaranteed, because you got that 4 power prot down from quantum. So basically you're paying 15 to turn 3 energy into a temperature bump. Definitely much better in the base game compared to colonies, where you would love to use the 3 power to trade. If you're going heavy into science, which this doesn't really require, I wouldn't say 3 science tags is heavy into science, but if you're going heavy into science, then you can afford to spend 3 power prot also when playing with colonies, probably, because you will get quantum mass or corona extractor, hopefully. I think in an engine setup, this can be good. Problem of, like, basically it requires you to go, and or not requires you, but most of the time you only get 3 science tags relatively early on if you're going for engine. Getting that much power prot also probably requires you to go for engine. The tags help with engine. And then the problem is it allows you to raise a global parameter, which is not something you want to do on the regular when playing engine. So getting TR might be better than actually raising heat or raising temperature as an engine player. Still, I think this can be nice to play in the mid game, getting a few points. I think it's an okay card. It's a nice concept, and I don't think it's too strong. I would need to play with it, but I think it's relatively nicely balanced because it's quite niche, I would say. Yeah, I'm fine with this card. Next up, Isolated Ecosystems. This one's really interesting. It costs 11 MC, has an animal tag, and it allows you to add 1 animal to another card for every 2 greeneries that are not adjacent to a city or special tile. So they can border oceans, they can border other greeneries, they cannot border cities or special tiles. I think it can be quite hard to get like more than 1 or 2 animals out of this, because there need to be a lot of greeneries on the map to get like 3 or 4 animals out of this. And when there are a lot of greeneries on the map, then someone wants to place some cities or special tiles next to them. I think this card is heavily overpriced because it's really niche. This is a card that you want to play in the last gen, because then most greeneries are down, and you will have a strong animal down, hopefully. Because on its own, this card doesn't do anything. It can't collect the animals itself. You need another animal down. And best case scenario, obviously, is a 1-point animal. And those are late game. So you want to play this card late game, but really late in the game, I don't think you will get more than 2 animals from this card. Are 4 greeneries that don't border a city or a special tile. And that's rare. That's really rare. Because, like, even I always say, don't overvalue cities, don't put that many cities down. Like, especially in the early game, you want to get greeneries down, you want to ocean walk, you don't want to put your greeneries next to your cities, you want to put them next to oceans to get MC back. You want to collect great placement bonuses and so on. But in the early game, special tiles are great because they let you pick up ocean rebates, or in the early to mid game, let you pick up ocean rebates, they let you pick up plants, they can teleport you out of bad spots, and so on. And these will often border greeneries, and then cities, obviously. Your opponents and you will be incentivized to put cities next to greeneries. So I think this is overpriced. I think this should be cheaper. But if you make it cheaper, it can sometimes be insane. But because there can be situations in which, like if this costs like 8 or 6 MC, then there can be situations where this absolutely pops off. But I think at 11 it's too pricey, especially because it doesn't do anything on its own. You need another card for it. And I think on the big map that released with Prelude 2, I think this can be crazy. All right, water buns. This costs 23. It requires 1 ocean down. It allows you to immediately put a greenery down. So it's more expensive than an SP greenery because you still need to pay for the card. So it costs 26 instead of 23. But it also has an effect and an action. The effect says when your greenery tile is placed, so any greenery tile, including this, add a seedling resource to this card, and then you can spend 4 of them to place a greenery tile. If you get this down really early on, then this can get you 3 greeneries in total, maybe more. Because basically 8 seedlings, so 8 greeneries, give you 2 more. And the one that you place with the action will give you another resource on here. So you basically only need 3 greeneries and you can place 1. And like 8 greeneries is really realistic. Maybe even maybe this, like if you get this down as the first greenery in the game, then this will give you 3, 4 greeneries, one immediately, and then 2 or 3 or even 4 afterwards. But it's also really expensive, and you need an ocean down. I think this could be an insane card for Credit Core, especially if you start with like an ocean prelude. If Credit Core starts with Great Aquifer and this card, then it's busted. You put Great Aquifer down, you 2 oceans next to each other, you put this greenery next to the oceans, get 4 MC back from that, get 4 MC back from your ability, and then you just go for a ground game and you get a lot of free greeneries out of this. I think it's quite difficult to balance something like this. And again, this is like, these are basically plants that can't be destroyed. So quite interesting. I think this is something that I would need to play test and see how strong it is. It seems quite strong, but obviously this falls off heavily in the late game. There's no combo potential on it with tags. If you have global discounts and you're playing Credit Core, you can still play this in the mid game because of the free greenery, or not free, but the greenery you get with it and the discounts. But in general, it's an early game card that is quite expensive. Next up, Plant City, and I read through this before I started recording, and I might not understand something here, but I think this is atrocious. So basically, it costs 8 MC and has a building tag. Decrease your energy production 1 step. Okay, so is this a city card? There's a big city icon on it. It says during the final greenery placement round after game end. Okay, this is already starting off really interesting because there's no other card that allows you to do something at that stage of the game. Place a city tile on one of the unused reserved areas on the map, disregarding normal placement restrictions. Are there any more reserved areas on the map other than Noctis City? The oceans? Maybe? But there aren't any reserved areas on the map, right? The volcanic areas aren't reserved. Like, the South Pole on Hellas isn't reserved. What is a reserved area? Like, reserved areas outside of Mars are like Phobos and Ganymede Colony, Lunar Metropolis. Those are reserved areas, but a city there doesn't do anything for you, except if you have pets or something. But on the map where a city actually does something and where you would need to regard placement restrictions, but not with this one. I think on the map there's only Noctis City, and maybe you could consider the empty ocean spaces as reserved area. Let me know if you think of something else here, but if it's only Noctis City and empty ocean spots, like if it's only Noctis City, this is unplayable because then there's only Thasks where you can play it, and if someone plays Noctis City, which is a great card, then this one is useless. If the oceans also count, then it can be nice, because there might be a few greeneries around, or you can plan around it, but all of them can also be blocked because there's 12 ocean spaces on the map, 9 oceans, so three can be left over, but there's also Protected Valley, Mangrove, and Morehole area. So if all 3 of them are played, and all 3 of them are good cards, then you can't put a city there. And so I think this is not great, especially because for 13, so 5 more, you get Immigrant City, which has a good ability and puts down a city immediately. So you can make use of the placement bonus, the ocean rebates that you get of it, and you can block a spot that you really want. And Planned City, you really have to hope until game end that something stays open for it. And yeah, I don't think, maybe the author of the card thought of something else when he made it and thought to make a card that allows you to put something on reserved areas, but how I understand it, this is bad. But let's move on. And this one is also really interesting, but really complicated. Hostile takeover. So put one of your corporations and one of your played preludes face down in your discard pile. So first of all, you don't have a discard pile. There's a discard pile, and you have to put it there, I guess. Then draw 3 corporation cards, play one of them, discard the other 2. Draw 3 preludes cards, play one of them, discard the other 2. Then pay 47 MC. So something that immediately confuses me is it says put one of your corporations and one of your played preludes. Does he mean played corporations? Because obviously you can have more than one corporation with merger. So does he mean played corporations? Because with the preludes he specifically says played preludes. With corporations he doesn't. But I'm assuming he means played in both cases. Then I think this is insane, because you can basically just play a corp which has a lot of starting capital but a bad ability. Best case scenario for that would probably be Mons Insurance, which you play. It gives you okay starting capital, really good economy, and completely screws over your opponents, but then has a bad effect. And then you play Hostile Takeover and just throw it out of there. And you have the great start, your opponents have the bad start, and you got rid of the bad effect. Polyphemus doesn't work quite as well because you need to buy the cards for the 5 MC in the research phase. And you at least suffer off its bad ability at the start, but it's still good to get rid of it, and it has still has quite a good start. And then like there's stuff like Terractor or Credit Core, which have great abilities, but also a lot of starting capital. And if you play them first and then get rid of them, you get that great starting capital. Same with preludes. If you play a prelude which just grants you great starting capital or card draw or development, something like Allied Banks, something like Donation. You just play it, you get once like an effect, a one-time effect, and then you get rid of the prelude. That's quite nice. Like bad preludes and corps for this would be stuff like, so the worst corp would be Terralapse, which has really bad starting capital. Yes, you only pay 1 for all of the cards you keep at the start, but then you don't benefit of the really strong ability. Or a really bad prelude for this would be all of the action and effect preludes in Prelude 2 or something like Research Network, which has a lot of its value stems from the wild tag, and you don't want to get rid of that. But yeah, you get rid of the corp and the prelude, and then you basically draw 3 more corp cards, play 1, draw 3 more prelude cards, play one of them. And I think in the end, this is just way too strong, because you just pick a good one of corp and prelude and get basically twice the amount of starting capital from your corp and twice the amount, or basically get to play 3 preludes most of the time, because most of the original preludes, they have a one-time effect that is great. And you pay only 5 MC more than you do with Merger. And I think this is just much better than Merger. It might not be as cool because Merger lets you end up with 2 corps and their ongoing effect, and that's most of the time the cool thing about the corps. But just in sheer value, I think Hostile Takeover is much stronger if it works as I think it does, and this is played Corporation. If not, then it's just double a prelude and pay 47 for it and draw more corps to see if you find something that you like better, but then it's horrible. So yeah, if this works how I think it does, it's way too strong, but it's a cool concept. Nurake Corporation, which I think is not quite good, and I think we can do this quite fast. It starts with 33 MC. That's a terrible start. It has a power tag on it, which most of the time doesn't do a lot. There's not a lot of combo potential for power tags. And it says during the production phase, you may convert a maximum of 3 unspent energy into the same amount of any standard resource. First of all, you should cut the unspent. Obviously, it has to be unspent. Or maybe this means that you can only do this with the energy that was left over from this generation, which is done in this production phase, and not with the new one that you get. So for example, that would mean you couldn't do it after Gen 1, because in Gen 1 you won't have energy. You will maybe get 3 energy prod, but you won't have energy that is then unspent after the gen, if you know what I mean. But if it is like that, then this is even worse. It should give you the flexibility to use either the 3 that were left after the gen or the new 3 that you get once you have produced. Basically, you can turn 3 energy into 3 amount of any standard resource, maybe titanium. But let's take a look at this trade. Like, power production costs 7 MC per power production that you get. Just think of power plant, the card, that costs 4 plus 3. With titanium, that costs not 7, but 10, because titanium mine costs 7 plus 3. Then the most expensive production is plant prod, which costs 9 plus 3. So you don't get double the value if you turn power into plants, and if you don't even get double the value, but with this low starting capital, it just doesn't work. Also, the fact that you have to do it during production phase and can't do it as an action during the gen is also bad, because if you want to get plants, they can get nuked if you're not first player. So you're sitting at 5 plants after production phase, and you think, okay, let me just convert 3 power into plants so I can convert next gen, but you're not first player, they can get destroyed. If this was an action, it would be much better. And then, of course, if you're playing with colonies, you don't want to spend 3 energy doing this. You want to have the 3 energy rather to trade. I think this is too weak. I think this should have more starting capital, and this should be an action, and maybe give it a second tag, maybe a wild tag, because you're playing with a lot of flexibility here, and the wild tag would fit that theme. Opportunity AI costs 38, so again, quite low. Choose 2 different tags as your first action. Reveal cards until you reveal 2 cards with these tags on them and take them into the hand and discard the rest. I guess if you choose like science and building, then you need to find a science tag. So the first science tag you find goes into your hand, and you need to find a building tag. You can't find like 2 science tags. You need to find 2 different ones. The cool thing here is, what if you choose, for example, science and building, and the first card you reveal is a card with a science and a building tag? Do you then reveal until you find either a science or building tag, or can you say with the first card, okay, I want to count this as a building tag, and then you get to draw until you find another science tag and skip the next building tag? I think this needs to be clarified. And the action, this is basically what I said with the last one. Gain 2 standard resources. They can be different and you can choose basically. So just better than Nurake because you get them for free. This one is it's just so much better than this one. Like, obviously these cards were made by different people, so they don't know about each other. And like, if the same person would have made these 2 corps, they were smoking. Like, this does not work. This is just a much better version of Nurake. And this one I think works. I think this one is okay. It's an all right corp. It gives you a lot of flexibility. I like it that you can choose plans to like be at 6 plans, then take another 2 and convert. And again, this basically lets you have 2 plans in your back pocket that can't be destroyed, and you can take them whenever you want. I think this works. I think it's a great idea. It's quite interesting. Just, I think we need to clarify how this immediate draw works. If there's like cards that hold both tags. Transmute Syndicate. This plays with an effect or an action or a concept that I saw a lot of times already. Basically turning titanium into steel and the other way around. It has a space tag and a building tag. It starts with 35 MC and then 5 steel and 5 titanium. So this is actually quite a lot of starting capital, because this down here is 25 and this up here is 35. So you start with 60, same as Saracta. And it's less than IC and Phobolog, but much more flexible, because more of it is MC, and then it's also split between the minerals. So that's quite nice. And flexibility is a good keyword, because you can, as an action once per gen, convert up to 5 steel into the same amount of titanium, or the other way around, so titanium into the same amount of steel. Obviously, turning titanium into steel usually is a losing trade, because steel is worth less than titanium. But sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes you're sitting on a shit ton of titanium, but you only draw building tags. Usually it's the other way around, especially if you're playing with colonies and the other expansions, because they introduce a lot of space tag and not a lot of building tags. So if you're playing with all expansions, like if you're playing base game, there's a lot more building tags than space tags. If you're playing expansions, this somewhat changes. I think there's still more building tags, but I'm not quite sure with all expansions. So turning steel into titanium with all expansions is insanely good. And yeah, this is just, I think this is quite a strong corp, even though it doesn't grant you any production or any ongoing help with your economy. Turning steel into titanium basically can be up to 5 MC prod per gen, because you can turn 5 steel, which is worth 10 MC, into 5 titanium worth 15 MC. But first of all, you need to get to 5 steel prod to do this on the regular. And secondly, do you even want it? Because do you draw space tags? That's the question. But it has a high amount of starting capital, and this action grants a lot of flexibility, so I still think this is quite good. Second to last card, this is Alpha Nova Consulting. And I think there's again something that needs to be clarified, because this starts with 42 MC. it says discard all 10 cards from your starting hand as your first action, draw 5 cards. And then you basically have the Mars U effect as an action. So once per turn, you can discard a card to draw a card. And what needs to be clarified here is it says discard all 10 cards from your starting hand. Does this mean you need to buy 10 cards, basically ending up with 12 MC? Then you discard them and draw 5, because that would be really bad. Or does this mean you just discard all and start the game with nothing, and then you just draw 5 random cards? Because then you start with 42 MC and 5 cards you didn't have to pay anything for, but you also don't know what you get, and you can just throw away the first 10 cards that got dealt to you. If it works that way, obviously it's much better, and it would fit into the theme, because then you draw 5 cards. Some or all of them might be bad, but you have the action to discard some of them and draw new ones. So basically you get 5 cycle cards. That's the term we use for Mars U. With Mars U, you always need cycle cards, so bad cards that you can discard and draw new ones. And this would fit. I hope it works like that, because I still think it wouldn't be too strong. There's a prelude that lets you discard a card and draw a new one. It also lets you discard a standard resource and draw another or the same one or whatever. That prelude is busted, but that prelude allows you to keep what you want out of your starting hand. Alpha Nova doesn't. If your starting hand is great, then Alpha Nova sucks. Alpha Nova is only good if your starting hand sucks. And you think, okay, maybe the other corp is even great. Maybe the other corp is Credit Corp, but Credit Corp can't do that much if the starting hand is super bad. Alpha Nova can discard the cards and just hope to get 5 good ones. You can do a lot of good stuff with 5 good cards in Gen 1. Or even with just 2 of them, and then start discarding the other ones. So I think like in the base game, or in for now, the best corp to draw if your starting hand is bad were like Inventrix and MSI, because they drew you 3 cards that could get you out of this bad starting hand. Alpha Nova is much better, because it basically allows you to look at 6 new cards in Gen 1. The 5 that you draw, and then you discard 1 and get a new one. So that's 6 cards you can look at in Gen 1. But of course, it's only great if you get the first, if you discard the 10 cards without having to pay for them. Otherwise, this corp is unplayable. And then you gotta let the people know that this is a Dutch Terraforming Mars event, because the last one is called Polar Tech Dutch. And this one is kind of funny. It costs, doesn't cost, it grants you 32 MC starting capital. As your first action, you place an ocean tile and a greenery tile next to it. So this is basically a lot of starting capital in disguise, because an ocean is worth roughly 14 MC, a greenery is roughly worth 18 MC, so that's 32, and another 32 here is 64. And then you also get like 2 MC cash rebate, so it's like 66. Obviously, you might not necessarily want an ocean and a greenery in Gen 1, but still, that's the basic cost of this stuff. And then the ongoing effect grants you a power resource whenever you place an ocean, and a plant resource whenever you place a greenery. So this heavily incentivizes you to go for a ground game, and specifically an ocean walk. And I think the game, especially with all of the expansions, is really leaning into just setting up the best engine, going for the best long game, trading most efficiently with all of the colonies. So something that a corp or prelude that allows you to perform a better rush is quite refreshing, and a polar tech is quite cool. It might still be a bit weak, because you can't play that much in Gen 1 with 32 MC. This is less than, for example, Ecoline, and Ecoline is famously poor. It kind of feels like Ecoline, because yes, you need 8 plants to convert a greenery, but you also get 1 plant back. So basically net cost of the greenery was 7 plants. So it's kind of like Ecoline, but you also get power resources from the oceans. This obviously is really good for gardener because you immediately start with a greenery, so you're already a third of the way there. I think Polar Tech is quite nice. And the most ridiculous combo would probably be Polar Tech plus that new ridiculous prelude that I forgot the name of that allows you to place a city, an ocean, and a greenery. This corp plus that prelude out of Prelude 2 would be busted together. That would be insane. Especially on Tharsis, but also on the other maps, it can be crazy. Like on Elysium, that would allow you to get that will allow you to get the 3 plants and the 3 cards, and then immediately set up a good ocean walk with the 2 oceans and the next greenery. On like Hellas, you immediately get Polar Explorer, or you set up the ocean walk in the northwest. And on the other maps, there's also great stuff that you can get. So that combination would be insane, but that preload is busted already with any corp. So yeah, Polar Tech on its own, I think is okay strength-wise. And I like the concept because it's made for Rush. So yeah, that was the last card of this set. Once again, thanks to all the people that made cards for the Dutch Open. Check out the link in the description. I know it's sold out for this year, but maybe you want to participate next year if you're from Europe or from the Netherlands specifically. I'm told they want to get a larger venue next time and allow more participants. And maybe you can also try to participate in the card contest. I think it's just always great that Terraforming Mars has such an active community, even though it's a board game that released quite a few years ago. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing. And yeah, I hope I see you in the next episode. Have a great one, guys, and goodbye.